Welcome. Okay. Welcome everyone. Hi. You are joining slowly, I guess, getting into the Zoom room. Welcome to the Sectors Let's Get Started online webinar of DEAL. As we're waiting people to join, I'm happy to be launching our new guide on how to apply Doughnut Economics to transform sectors with this webinar, and having a great group of speakers and practitioners to be joining us today and hear from them how they're working on the ground. As you're joining, you might want to just share on chat your name, the organization, maybe the place where you're based, and if you like your superpower. What is the special gift you bring to the world? And maybe in this meeting today. So as you're joining and people are coming into the digital space, you may want to share on chat who you are, the organization you're part of, the place you're joining from.
So someone just wrote that the chat is disabled.
Okay, great. Did we activate it now?
No, I'm not sure if we have the... I'm gonna check if we're able to.
Okay. All right. Well, we have already about 120 people in the room. We will get the chance to interact a bit later. But we are glad you're here and joining for this first webinar on sectors and the donut. And maybe slowly I will start with some introductory points. What are we doing today? We will get the chance to dive deep into what it means sectoral transformation. And we will share some insights from the work we have carried out, and you will find them also on the recently published guide. We will also have the chance to hear from different initiatives who have joined us and share how they are doing things on the ground, how they are transforming sectors. And yes, we would love to hear your questions. Hopefully the chat will work because that was the place where we were hoping you could share your questions. Lenore, is it working now? Or should I?
It's not working. I'll let you know when we manage and if we manage to activate it. The Q&A is working, so if people
Okay,
are able to ask, if the chat isn't active, the questions can be asked in the Q&A.
perfect. Good to know. Good. Well, the idea is that throughout the webinar, you might have some questions and some thoughts that we would love to hear. So add them on the Q&A section, and some of them I might be able to bring them also to the conversation with the practitioners, and some others I'll keep them for later and follow up in the next days. So great, I'm happy we are all here. We are having now about 170 people in the room. I wish I could see you all, but I feel somehow the space we have created. And I will give the floor for a moment to Kate. Hi, Kate. You want to share some words with everyone who is here today?
Hi, yeah, it's a huge pleasure to see everybody arriving. I just want to say I'm so delighted that we've got this webinar happening today. I mean, I first drew the original version of the Doughnut, here it is, back in 2012, right? So the Doughnut is now a teenager. It's 13 years old. And it was very soon after I first published it as a discussion paper at Oxfam that people started getting in touch and saying, can we do this as a company? Can we do this as a town? But also sectors very early on. Can we do this for food? Can we do this for tourism? Can we do this just as an area, like designing a new part of a town? So it was really clear that people wanted to adapt it. And it's been time, right? Maybe now that we're a teenager, that the teenager is old enough to start taking on something like sectors, because of course we've been working with governments, local and national. We've been working with companies, with communities, with NGOs, but the sectors work really goes another layer out. and brings things together of many, many different actors working on a shared field across complex value chains, across continents. So it's another layer, and it's exciting that we're doing this. So I'm very delighted to have one of, I printed out an early copy of the report to really enjoy reading every page of it. So it's fantastic that we're launching this today. What I particularly am excited about is all the people, all the panelists who are joining us today, because at the heart of this work is the fact that it's practice-led. We didn't, at Doughnut Economics Action Lab, we didn't sit down and say, how should sectors do it? We started in Ilektra, led a wonderful process of getting in touch with people through the internet, through contacts, through friends of friends telling us they heard of an initiative, getting in touch with people who were just already doing it. What are you doing? What have you created? How are you doing it? What's the approach? What's the level you're going in at? So it's really based on learning from people putting into practice. And that's really at the heart of our name as an organization. It's why we're called Doughnut Economics Action Lab. It's all about action. So it's all about learning from and with people who are putting these ideas into practice. And it's a lab because this is one big experiment, people. We know we are experimenting with transforming historically inherited sectors that we know have been designed in a very 20th century industrial way. They're deeply degenerative. They tend to be running down the living world. They're often very divisive, capturing value and opportunity in few hands. So we are all together part of many small and one big experiment of, can we transform the sectors in which we find ourselves working? And is the framework of Doughnut Economics useful towards that end? How can it be useful? How can it assist the transformations that you're already aiming to bring about? We've loved as a team seeing how people are really respecting the concept and seeking to hold the integrity of the donut, hold the integrity of the social foundation and the ecological ceiling and the goals that it pursues, and the 7 ways to think like a 21st century economist in Doughnut Economics. So working with integrity with those ideas, but applying them, adapting them to the specific and the reality and the complexity that is a sector, that is an initiative within a sector, that is a project. So it's humbling to see the way that people have taken this on and really grappled with it and shared back. And I want to say we thank everybody for sharing back, publishing, telling stories, putting it on our platform on doughuteconomics.org. Very solid experience that it's the sharing back that creates massive ripples of inspiration for other practitioners like yourselves who might be in the same or a different sector, but say, wow, look what they've done here. We could do that over here. So please share back, because it's what encourages and gives permission and inspiration to others. So I'm really looking forward to hearing the amazing panelists we've got on this session today, who are going to be sharing from such different experience, such different entry points, such different sectors, but all with this shared goal of transforming the future of what we're calling sectors through the lens of Doughnut Economics. How can it help us? How far can we get? And what are we learning together? Last thing to say is, let's just acknowledge we are getting started, right? These are early days. These are early days of applying Doughnut Economics to sectors. They're also early days of the transformation to our economies that we all know we need. So we come at it with a humility, with an openness, an experimentation of where's it going right, where's it going wrong, how can we learn from both of those and forge forward together. So with that, I'm so looking forward to hearing from all these case studies and learning together on this launch webinar. Let's get going. Thank you, Ilektra.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you very much. And yes, you tapped into many things I would like to share also. I will be sharing some insights from the work we have done and that you will find also on the guide that we just published, and also practical examples like case studies from around the world that are doing this work. And then we will move to the discussion. So in the guide is there. You can download it from the Deal platform and start exploring. You will find some recommendations and do's and don'ts, as well as practical cases that apply Doughnut Economics to sectors, and some workshop tools for kicking it off. But yes, as Kate mentioned, the work of the Doughnut, since the Doughnut was published in 2017, it has inspired so many initiatives in either communities, cities and regions, business and governments, schools and researchers to translate these ideas into action. And indeed, the sectoral work was emerging in the conversations we would have either with individual businesses or with localities and cities and governments. We could identify that such initiatives were also emerging. And what are the sectors and why we are talking about them today? Sectors are intricate systems that interact with other systems. They require the collaboration between actors from government and business and civil society with institutions, so they are quite complex, and they are not refined into localities. They are cross-national, they have global value chains, so they are complex, and they are somehow encompassing other systems that we have seen working with Doughnut Economics. Here at Deal, we are not trying to create another term about what sectors are, but really we're using the term loosely in the manner that practitioners tend to do when referring to important parts of the economy, important common activities, common economic activities. And to understand sectors, we actually did, since last year, a mapping exercise, and we have already identified approximately 50 global initiatives, and I think as we're speaking, there will be more coming up and reaching out. And we have interviewed so far about 25. And many of them are still at the early stage of development or conceptualization, but others are already testing some of these ideas on the ground. And imagine that we have seen initiatives trying to implement Doughnut Economics in the energy sector, construction, housing, transport, fashion, technology, food and agriculture, healthcare, beauty, cultural events, tourism, elderly care, and education. So it's a very broad range. But while studying these initiatives, we identified some common patterns, some common challenges, and these are challenges that you might have heard that they are broad and they are relevant to the current economic systems. For example, sectors still operate on a linear model of take, make, waste, and depleting Earth resources and creating waste. Many sectors are still characterized by exploitative labor practices, undermining worker rights and well-being, often in pursuit of lower production costs. We also heard that, of course, there are economic disparities that persist within and between both companies and countries, and that current business practices are often divisive, concentrating profits in the hands of a few. Initiatives often talked about the complex and non-transparent value chains that are often opaque, making difficult to trace the origin of materials and assess the ethical and ecological impacts of projects. Also, we heard a lot about the market competition and that exists between actors, leading them to work in isolation, creating strategies that are isolated rather than collaborating as much as needing for a holistic problem solving and innovation. And last but not least, it's often discussed the lack of metrics and regulation, the lack of regulatory standards that are measuring and managing the ecological and social impacts of businesses is often a common barrier for sectoral transformation. And when we are talking about this, I wanted the full picture. But how can we imagine the future of the sector with Doughnut Economics? Here we would like to invite you to think beyond just the visual of the donut and really integrate the seven principles of Doughnut Economics in creating a future, in creating a fully regenerative and distributive vision So there are some examples of initiatives that are taking this approach, like the case of Stephen Hartman, that he took the intellectual exercise and applied those 7 key principles to the tourism sector to create a completely different future vision for the sector. You can find these works on the guide. And as I was interviewing all these initiatives, although they have such a variation of entry points and approaches, we found that there were some common patterns in the regions they choose to work with Doughnut Economics. And these are the 9 reasons we have summarized that the sectoral initiatives are choosing to work with Doughnut Economics. And let's see together some examples that are doing this for each of them. So one of the reasons that they're using it is to educate and raise awareness. Here we have the case of the material donut that was developed by ACN, the Architects Climate Action Network, who run workshops with architects, designers, and other actors of the built environment, utilizing the donut to foster awareness and educate them about the potential impacts of the different materials across the value chain. Another reason that they choose to work with the donut is to set standards and thresholds. And here we have the case of the donut for urban development, developed by Home Earth and Effect, and they are also here today to speak on the panel later. And they have developed a toolkit that aims to assess the on-site and off-site impacts of urban development projects within social and planetary boundaries. They have actually, amongst others, introduced a concept of an absolute carbon budget per square meter of development based on the whole life cycle of the building and the carbon footprint of materials used. Third reason that initiative use the donut is to influence policy and advocacy. Here we have the case of the Royal Society of Chemistry that are aimed to develop a policy brief using the donut model as a compass to establish a new vision for the national chemistry research agenda, making sure that they are integrating social consideration as well as ecological. Another reason is to create a holistic design approach. We have the case here of the Das Explorers, a built environment consultancy from Belgium, that they use the donut as a holistic framework to develop design concepts early on to integrate social and ecological impact of the building from the beginning of the development of the design. 5, many use the donut because it helps them understand the big picture. Here we have the case of a group of academics from the universities of Melbourne and also Oslo, in collaboration with environmental campaigners and funders. And they have organized the One Planet Shipping workshop last May that brought together diverse actors from the shipping sector. And they stayed all together on a boat for some days, running a workshop, and they used the donut to map how the sector operates currently, highlighting where there are certain pressures and impacts, with the intention to reimagine the sector and its role within the economy. Number 6, donut is often used because it can break down silos. Here we have the case of the architectural design of a school in Tomelilla, Sweden, by Wen consultancy, design consultancy, who are also here with us to speak later. They actually developed and designed that challenged the traditional construction practices and mindsets, and created the space for this challenging but necessary conversation among the collaborators of the project to happen. 7, to envision an alternative future of the sector. The USA-based consultancy Business of Craft brought together, again in a workshop, different craft business owners to think of an alternative future of the sector based on the principles of the Doughnut Economics. It asked them to think out of the box and not focus on the traditional practical and financial constraints, but allow themselves to think big. And 8, the Doughnut allows people to convene broader coalitions and networks. For example, we have the project of Homes That Don't Cost the Earth, which is a collaboration between ARUP, Dark Matter Labs, Rising Tide, and UCL. It's a project about mapping the policy, financial, and technical interventions that can provide affordable homes for all within planetary boundaries. And it uses an adapted Doughnut for housing as a framework. And last, this was mentioned by different initiatives. They choose to use the Doughnut because of its visual power and that it can directly touch hearts and inspire change. Here we have the case of the Doughnut accessibility that was developed by the research group of the University of Helsinki studying spatial accessibility. And they chose to use the Doughnut as a framework because of its simple visual that speaks directly to people's minds and hearts. And at the same time, it provides a completely radically new approach to traditional sustainability research and narratives. So, how to use Doughnut Economics? We saw how different initiatives, the reasons different initiatives are choosing to work with the Doughnut. But how do we really use it to transform sectors? What we noticed is that although all the various sectoral initiatives have common ambitions, they might start from different entry points when they want to transform a sector. And these are usually summarized in these three level of sectoral activities. Some initiatives are aiming to enable a whole sectoral transformation, really engage with all the actors all together and have a big picture overview. Other initiatives are focusing on specific organization. They're trying to change the strategy and the practices, and from there, influence what happens in the sector as a whole. And then we have initiatives that they really create interventions on a project level. Through radical practices and new approaches that they apply on a project, they aim to create ripple effects on the whole ecosystem and their sector. For all these three levels, we have developed do's and don'ts to empower those that want to continue working with sectoral transformation, while also we try to keep the integrity of Doughnut Economics thinking. And you can see all of those on the guide. I'm going to share with you some initiatives that are reflecting each of those levels. So, enabling whole sectoral transformation. As I said, some initiatives are aiming to target the sector as a whole, bring actors from different levels of the value chain, create the big picture and enhance collaboration and conversation between them. Here we have the case of the Rome Food Policy Council, which actually is they are with us today. It's a collaboration between the Center for Food Studies at the American University of Rome and the Rome Food Policy Council. And they are actually bringing together different food policy councils from around the world in a workshop that takes place in June in Rome. And they are actually bringing unite representatives from associations, farmers, researchers, companies, consumer good groups, and individual citizens to discuss urban food policies. There, they also want to bring the Doughnut model that they have downscaled for the food sector to use it as a participatory tool to evaluate and compare the actions of the food policy councils globally. And we will hear more about this in the panel. And then we have this piece of work that targets the fashion sector, developed by the British Fashion Council. It's a work on developing a roadmap for circular fashion ecosystems in London and Leeds. And the project actually brought together different coalitions of actors across all the different groups of actors that are part of the fashion sector. And they use the donut as a compass to make sure that their design and their strategies would be influenced by the principles of Doughnut Economics to create a distributive and regenerative fashion sector. Now, as I said before, some initiatives are focusing on the work of individual organizations and how they can sift those to influence the work of the sector. And here we have the case of Specialty Coffee Association, who are also here today. And they are a network of coffee actors, and they try to transform the sector by transforming the strategies of the individual businesses. What they do is they run workshops during their global trade shows, applying the Doughnut for Business tool, the enterprise design tool, to unlock new ideas on the design of this organization, and in this way slowly influence how the sector as a whole operates. And then another example here is the case of the Plant-Based Treaty, who are also with us today. And it's an initiative that applied the donut to food system. And by doing so, they actually broaden their thematic priorities. They realized there are many more topics they could include in their programmatic agenda. And they also influenced in that way their policy advocacy and made it wider. And last level, it's the creating project level interventions. Here we have projects that are working, as I said, on a project level, and they are trying to implement the donut thinking for projects. This is the case of the Highways Donut. It was developed as part of the Live Labs project in UK in collaboration with three counties, Somerset, Cornwall, and Hampshire. And what they did is they developed a project assessment tool. They took the donut, they adapted it to the sector and the needs, and they developed an assessment to assess their policies and projects, making sure that they balance both social and ecological considerations. And we will hear from them also later in the panel. And now, a few tools before I close about how to kick it off, something you want to consider before you get your hands dirty. So tip 1, something that was discussed a lot with most of the initiatives, adapt the donut dimensions. Initiatives often ask these questions. Can we change the language of the donut? Is it permitted to disregard the dimension entirely? Is it acceptable to introduce new themes that better capture the nuances of the sector? Well, the answer is yes. The donut can be adapted, and we have seen that happening through the initiatives that work on a sectoral level because they want to make it relevant for the actors and the language to be recognizable. But we recommend to keep the visual logic of the donut, that the inner ring represents the social foundation, the outer ring the ecological ceiling. You can remove dimensions, but don't be reductionist. We would love to keep the holistic nature of the donut intact. And also, you can add dimensions as long as they are focused on social and ecological issues. You can find much more about that on the guide. Now, when it comes down to visualizing data in a sectoral donut, that was also something that many initiatives talked about. They had questioned, how can we really downscale the donut to a sectoral level? And the answer is not so straightforward and easy. This is a complex exercise, and there are no known examples yet that they do the actual veggies of the donut. There is one that is currently being prepared on healthcare, and we're also going to hear some words from them in the panel. But actually, the quantitative downscaling of the planetary boundaries, according to Deal, needs to consider a concept that has to do with the national fair share, based on ethical principles, equality, capacity, and historical responsibility. Historical responsibility is actually the principle most aligned with Doughnut Economics because it makes the impact of historically high-consuming nations visible, thereby making evident their responsibility to carry out now more ambitious regenerative practices. So the idea is that once a global resource budget has been downscaled to a given country's national fair share, only then a portion can be allocated to a sector. Dive deeper to the guide to learn more. And last but not least, if we are talking about sectoral transformation, we shouldn't forget about the role of the enterprise design of each individual business. Take the tool of the deep design and bring it to your sector. Have this difficult conversation. Study and analyze the particular ownership models that are relevant and are more prominent in your sector, and see how they might challenge transformation and discuss what would work better. Think about the networks and all the different layers of the enterprise design and go deep into this conversation with individual businesses. And now you are ready to kick it off. There are 3 exercises that you can dive deeper in the guide and take and play with. Definitely, we would love to hear your feedback. Download the guide. This, as Kate said, this is just the beginning. This is a new practice, and we are learning a lot from the ground and from what you are all doing and experimenting with. So please share your feedback, share back what you're doing, and upload it on the old platform, and let's keep the conversation going. So I'm here for you to answer questions and reach out later on. And with that, actually, I would like to kick off the conversation. I want to have the most possible time with all the different initiatives that we have with us, and we have many. Maybe we give now the spotlights to everybody who is here, and they will slowly introduce themselves one by one, what is their initiative, what they are working on, and then we will have the chance to have a conversation. So if you are there, I will give the floor to Danny Hill Hansen from Effect, who has worked for developing the Doughnut for urban development. Hi, Danny.
Hello, thank you. Yes, hi, my name is Danny Hill Hansen, and I am an architect and a sustainable design engineer out of Copenhagen. And I have had the privilege to work on the Doughnut for Urban Development, which is a book, actually. It ended up as a book that you can get online as an open source tool. I was a co-editor on the project together with Home Earth, and we were lucky to do this project with many, many people. It was the first sectoral Doughnut. So we brought a lot of people along to make sure we did it right, including the deal team and Stockholm Resilience Center. So you need a lot of people to make a sectoral Doughnut right. The result was 48 ecological and 48 social impact areas, looking at both the local and global impacts of the building industry and urban development. One of the big findings we had in this project is first, that the 4 lenses are key. It's a wonderful starting point to unpack the impact of your sector and make sure that you have a holistic viewpoint, particularly in industry like the building industry, which is resource intensive and materials come from far away. The global lens is something we must focus on. Another key learning for us was that, you know, the world doesn't need more certifications or checklists. And until further notice, there are no Doughnut cities, urban developments, or buildings. We're not there yet. The safe and just space is a wonderful future target and ambitious target worth fighting for, but we are not there yet. So we have to be careful in how we talk about our projects and how we work with the Doughnut. You can go to the next. And in the work, we were able to set absolute targets for carbon budgets and biodiversity, which are the 2 core systems or systems that the building industry impacts. This is a process of allocation, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. But we're actually able to set environmental targets to scale building impact within planetary boundaries, which was a pretty big finding. In terms of social impact assessment, which is quite hard to do with global supply chains, we found out that it's most important to be transparent and begin documenting what we don't already know today. And in the work, we talk quite a lot about redefining the purpose of business to actually meet the needs of people in the planet, to sort of move beyond the idea of business as something to make money, but rather business as a way to facilitate safe and just practice. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here. And we will have the chance to talk again at the next round. Thank you, Danny. And let me give the word to Christine, who is representing the Highways Doughnut. Hi, Christine.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Christine Strandberg. I am from Circular Economy, a Dutch impact organization. And for the last 2 years, we have been working closely with 3 UK authorities, highway authorities and county councils, to develop a highways donut. It's part of an innovation project called Live Labs 2 on decarbonizing the highway sector in the UK. So what we have done is that we have adjusted the themes, specifically addressing the specific impacts of the road sector. And for each of these themes, we have set up Doughnut States, which is defining the ideal direction for each of our 18 themes. So there are 9 social and 9 ecological themes. And if you just press one button, Ilektra. So the Highways Doughnut Toolkit has been created consisting of 2 separate tools. So we are both targeting the strategic level of the UK county councils, as well as the implementation on a project level. And if we move to the next slide, I'll go into it a little bit deeper. So the toolkit, the Highways Doughnut Toolkit, it consists of a spreadsheet with the strategic level and project level tools where you can evaluate the social and ecological impacts of the sector. And these have also an associated guidance manual on how you should use these toolkits, of course, and workshop canvases, which can be used in workshop settings, assessing all these 18 themes. And the tools have been trialed in the 3 UK counties. And right now we're adjusting the tools, specifically targeting, of course, the outcomes of those trials to make sure that it fits the realities of the counties.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to have you here. Great to have you. I give the word to Andres Montenegro from Doughnut and the Coffee Sector, Specialty Coffee Association. Andres, are you there?
I am indeed.
Oh.
Thank you, Ilektra. Well, Andres Montenegro, I'm the Sustainability Director at the Specialty Coffee Association, which is the largest global coffee trade association, dedicated, as our motto say, to making coffee better by fostering a global coffee community and supporting activities to make specialty coffee a thriving, equitable, and sustainable endeavor for the entire value chain. That's our purpose. We used to say that we do this through collaboration and progressive approaches that help us to support the industry and the sector through research, standards, educations, and events. We're not going to the details, but that's all, a quick snapshot of what we do. And we work around the world, and we are trying to elevate worldwide coffee standards, providing value and high quality connectivity for our growing global community. On the Doughnut connection, we started in 2023. Yes, the next one, please.
Okay, sorry, I was quick.
We started in 2023 with Erinch. We made the connection with the Doughnut Design for Business. We started to use the tool as part of workshops in our trade shows. We have 4 big trade shows every year around the world, in North America, Europe, Asia, now also in in Central and South America. And from there, I think that we have evolved from this, let's say, particular initiatives to more smooth integration with the vision of the Doughnut. We have a, let's say, multi-perspective approach, trying to activate our networks and capacities, connecting the Doughnut in all the activities and channels that we develop at the association. This aligns with our sustainable coffee agenda, and somehow trying to lead a new way of thinking and doing in the sustainability conversation within the specialty coffee sector. And I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Great to have you here with us, Andres. Thank you for being here. Let us introduce the next panelist. It's Anita Krant. I hope I'm pronouncing it well, from the Plant-Based Treaty. Hi, Anita. You want to
Hi.
start some words?
Hi, I'm Anita Krines, Global Campaign Coordinator, Plant-Based Treaty. Our sectoral approach looks at how to transform the global food system to stay within our ecological and social boundaries. The food system is a leading contributor to the breach of 6 planetary boundaries, from climate change to land use, biosphere integrity, freshwater change, biogeochemical flows, and ocean acidification. Food production accounts for 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions. 83% of the farmland is used to raise animals, yet supplies only 18% of calories. A shift towards a plant-based diet would allow us to rewild 76% of farmland. Our food system is also breaching social boundaries outlined in the UN Sustainable Development Goals, yet food policy is about 30 years behind energy policy. The Doughnut Economics model has enabled us to widen the lens to incorporate interspecies justice alongside intergenerational and intragenerational justice. We outline 9 pathways to reforming the global food system, including no land use change like deforestation for expanded animal agriculture, indigenous protection, banning live exports, food security, education, health, transparency, and honest labeling, financing plant-based food system, reforestation and rewilding, greening cities, food justice, and land equity. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
We developed 40 detailed proposals to show that all levels of government and society can play a role. 40 cities, 4,000 businesses and groups, and 250,000 individuals have endorsed the call for a global plant-based treaty. Through community organizing, workshops, and advocacy, our 140 teams on the ground are campaigning and working with cities to develop plant-based action plans. Cities that have endorsed include Amsterdam, Edinburgh, Belfast, West Hollywood, Tavira in Portugal, Parla in Spain, and Brampton in Canada.
Great. Thank you, Anita. And we will chat again together in a bit. Thank you very much for being here and bringing your work. And I give the floor now to the Rome Food Policy Council. We have 2 speakers, is Laura Prota and Tess Washburn. And we'll hear a thing from Tess first about what this is initiative about, and then we'll hear from Laura how it's been applied. Am I correct? It's first Tess speaking on the slides. Hi, Tess.
Hello, my name's Tess Washburn. I recently received my Master in Sustainable Food Systems from the American University in Rome, where I met Laura Prota, who is Professor of Food Economics and Coordinator in Rome's Food Policy Council. You will hear from Laura in the discussion. Food systems must change, and fast. We currently produce enough food to feed everyone on the planet, yet hunger and famine persist. Food systems continue to contribute to over 1/4 of global greenhouse gas emissions, and impending urbanization threatens to exacerbate the social and environmental failings within our sector, as Anita was saying. In response, food policy councils are emerging worldwide. The map here displays the 300 active in the US alone. Food policy councils have various characteristics and governance structures, but all bring together an array of stakeholders to develop coherent food policy for their city or region. One issue, however, is they lack a cohesive strategy that fosters the global awareness necessary for this transformative systemic change. That's where the Doughnut Economic Model comes in. Next slide.
Yeah.
As part of my master's thesis, I interviewed the coordinators within Rome's Food Policy Council to determine their priorities and initiatives. I then mapped these priorities against the donut model dimensions to see which dimensions were being directly impacted by the council's work. The purple graphs display our results, with the darker purple color representing a higher number of times that the dimensions of the donut model were being directly addressed. This analysis helped us to identify the emphasis on social issues within Rome's Food Policy Council. Social issues are being addressed more frequently and more directly across the working groups, while the environmental issues are being addressed less frequently by primarily only one of the working groups and often only indirectly by the others. That's not to say it wasn't being addressed, just in different ways and less frequently. This is in line with current reports on food policy councils in the United States and suggests the use of the donut model within food policy councils to more effectively design food policy, demanding awareness of the global environmental impact of food systems along with the local and social concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Tess. And Laura, thank you for being here and bringing this great work. I'm so happy you're all here. Such a varied approach. We will come back to you. And now I'm giving the word to Jenny Gretve from Wen and the initiative of a school in Tomelilla and the architectural design of it. Hi, Jenny.
Hello, thank you, and hi everyone. Yes, so my name is Jenny. I'm an architect and strategic designer based in Sweden. And since many years, I work with systems thinking and societal transformation, and I run the design studio Wen, but I'm also head of transformation at the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. So last year, I led this project in the small municipality of Tomelilla. It's a village in southern Sweden. And they were asking for someone to help them explore and create a new primary school based on Doughnut Economics. So I'll do a very, very mega short introduction here by saying that the work was quite wild, holistic, and then we tried to move beyond traditional dialogues of what makes an architectural project successful. So we touched upon blockchain, community care, local materials, a school that owns itself, and also topics on how to disrupt existing systems. So all of this we did closely with the municipality, the local community, students from various universities, and with children themselves.
Great.
Next
Then
slide.
move to next.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry. Yep.
And we made an enormous amount of interesting learnings. One is the idea that we can make a donut building, which is also what Danny touched upon and mentioned as well. We cannot. So therefore, in this project, we suggested a school without a building in the end. But the most important learning, I think, is that many are possibly not ready yet to mentally face the scale of change needed. We want fast solutions, preferably in Excel sheets, to something that is massively complex. So what I still keep with me today is the importance of being both creative and kind and brave at the same time.
Thank you, Jenny. I still remember a lot of our conversation about this project, and I'm happy you're here. Thanks a lot. And I'm moving to the next initiative because we are so many. We have Shirley Newland, an independent researcher and advisor who has worked with the Doughnut and tourism. Hi, Shirley.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, so my name is Shirley Newland, and I work with applying Doughnut Economics to the tourism sector as part of my PhD research on sustainable tourism. And I started this research because I was kind of done with analyzing all the problems and all the issues in tourism and wanted to start working on change in practice. So I developed workshops based on Doughnut Economics to conduct with several destinations in the Netherlands, 7 cities to be precise. And during the workshops, there were people from the destination marketing organization and local government present. And during the workshop, we focused mainly on the first goal or the first principle of Doughnut Economics, so changing the goal. And this is because this was the main outcome of my previous research, that the focus on growth was a big issue within tourism. And also because the workshop only lasted for 2.5 hours, so there was not really time to discuss everything. And the aim of the research was of the workshop was to rethink tourism strategies in such a way that it moved from this focus on growth to prioritizing the other elements, the social and the ecological elements of the donut. And this is also what you see in the picture with the post-its, that those are like the initiatives that the cities came up with to contribute to those elements of the donut. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
Thank
I'm
you.
having a bit of a funny thing with my clicker. Here we go.
No worries. Okay. Yeah, and some of the outcomes, very briefly, of course, there were different levels of engagement and openness to the donut. Some of the participants were really excited about this and really open, and they knew it already, and others were completely new to it, so they had to get the thinking started a little bit. And for that reason, the outcomes and the actions that came out of the workshop also varied greatly. So some of the cities, they made some first small steps, like changing the website offer to showcasing the more sustainable initiatives. But others were already ready to rethink their strategies completely, and also rethinking the KPIs and how they wanted to measure the successfulness of tourism in their city completely. But most of all, the workshops, they really served more as an inspiration session for those destinations to plant the first seed in rethinking the tourism development, and from there trying to integrate this way of thinking further and making more steps, which is something I still continue to work on these days. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. Great to hear about this work. And let me give the floor now to Jonah, who is the last of the initiatives. Jonah Drew from the Lancet Commission of Sustainable Healthcare. They
Hi,
are the
everybody.
ones. Hi, Jonah.
Hi, it's really nice to be here. So yeah, my name is Jono. I'm a New Zealand trained medical doctor and current Vanier and Killam doctoral scholar at Dalhousie University in Canada. I'm going to provide a really brief overview of a collaborative effort that I've been leading to downscale the donut to the healthcare sector. This work has been part of the Lancet Commission on Sustainable Healthcare, which is an international initiative dedicated to achieving sustainable, resilient, and equitable health systems globally. The commission, which is being led by Andrea McNeil at UBC and Jody Sherman at Yale University, will culminate late this year or early next year in a large report that will be published in the Lancet Medical Journal. And within this report, there'll be a chapter dedicated to our so-called healthcare donut. So because this work is not yet published, unfortunately, I can't share any specific results at this time, but essentially what we've done is adapt the original donut framework in order to define healthcare's safe and just space, what we're terming sustainable quality care for all. So while the original framework used the social foundation ecological ceiling to bound its safe societal space, we define a healthcare specific foundation and ecological ceiling using a range of healthcare performance targets, as well as healthcare's sectoral fair share of the safe planetary operating space. We then apply this downscaled framework to quantitatively assess the performance of both the global healthcare system and 200-odd national health systems, depicting shortfall and overshoot relative to the safe space using wedges, much like the original framework did. Anyway, it's really nice to join the conversation today, and I look forward to learning more about the various initiatives in the discussion. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Jonah. It's great to have you, and also it's really impressive to see still the variety of approaches that we have and all the different sectors, all different initiatives. It's really rich and great. Yeah, I hope you all there follow all this variety and all this richness. I'm going to ask some questions to the initiatives to elaborate a little bit more, but you can dive deep into the guide and also look at their work on their links and learn more about them. If you have questions still, you can put them on the Q&A mode. and let's see which ones we could have some time to add in the end. And with the same order that the initiatives appeared, maybe I go back to Danny and the Urban Development Doughnut, who was they were the first actually initiative to apply Doughnut Economics to sectors, to the built environment sector. And it was the first and the most comprehensive approach. So thank you for this, Danny, that you have inspired many others. Maybe it's nice if you could share with us a bit more on the methodology. You shared a bit how you worked and a little bit about the novelty of the carbon budget and what unique contributions does the tool bring to the built environment sector?
Great. Okay, that's a lot of questions and things to cover, but I think I can do it shortly. Yes, as I mentioned, the work was a collaboration of many people, and one of the important things we wanted to do was figure out how to sort of quantify building impact within planetary boundaries. I was a part of another effort here in Denmark called Reduction Roadmap, where we took this same novel approach of taking a global carbon budget and allocating it down to a national level. Here, I've made a small drawing. It's maybe not so clear, but okay, it's not going to show up. But we took basically a global carbon budget, which is finite and limited, and we divided it down to a national level, so down to Denmark, then to a sectoral level, then down to building typology. And in doing this, what we learned and explored were different allocation approaches and different sharing principles. So we looked at, for example, ability to pay, historic responsibility, and we explored a novel approach to allocation based on sufficiency. So what do we really need? And in all of these sort of allocation approaches, we learned that countries like Denmark with significant carbon debt and significant consumption over the last century have a very small share or a negative share of the global carbon budget. And what this showed us was that developers and project teams hoping to explore the Doughnut for urban development on a project level will actually need to shift away from new construction and consider using the materials and resources we already have. And this is quite a strong learning for us with this project. And I think what we know now, and we've been working with following the launch of Doughnut for urban development, are two projects I will point people to sort of explore this further. One is Beyond the Roadmap, where we actually have created a degrowth transition plan for the building industry to actually look at these finite limits and what shifts we need to make. And another is a new movement, which has just started in the last few months, called Byggestoppbevægelsen, which in Danish means a building stop movement. And so there's a lot of other activists and groups working now to create a construction halt here in Denmark so that we can, give more of a share to the finite carbon budget to other people in other places that still have a lot of, you could say, development to do.
Very interesting work. And I'm curious to see a bit more how all this unfolds, especially in the construction sector. Thank you so much for being here. And as we said, like, people can dive deeper into this work that you have developed on the Doughnut, urban Doughnut. And I will give now the floor to Christine Strandberg with the Highways Doughnut.
Yes, hi again.
Hi, Christine. Hi. I was thinking to ask you about the process you followed on the on adapting the Doughnut themes, because it's a topic that is often discussed. How you chose some topics versus others. What was the process you followed to make such a Doughnut that's relevant for a sector, for your sector?
Yes, it was a very thorough and very iterative process that we followed in with the Highways Doughnut. So we worked very closely with the three UK authorities, the county authorities. Together, we deep dove into the current practices that they do within maintaining roads. What do they currently do? What do they look at? but also approaches of the sector as a whole. We also did a long policy review to see what do all these counties currently have targets on, what are the policies to decarbonize the road sector, for example, but also understand what the statutory requirements are, of course. But at the same time, as we learn more about the sector, we also researched other donut initiatives. Of course, the urban donut was one that we looked at a lot to learn from similar processes. So how we can think broadly about the donut impacts for a specific sector. So based on this knowledge, both on the current practices and the research from other initiatives, we then started mapping the relevance of the original themes to the impact of our sector. So some themes were deleted. For example, food, we saw a very, very slim relevance to the road maintenance sector. But other themes were merged, such as the nitrogen and phosphorus loading and chemical pollution were combined. And then we added some new themes, of course, such as accessibility is really key for the social side of the road, of course, but also material footprint. How can we minimize the carbon from our materials? So once we've selected our themes, they were discussed and adjusted in many working sessions, and ultimately they resulted in these 9 social themes and 9 ecological themes. And so they specifically address, of course, the holistic impact of the highway sector. And also just a short thing for this, we also agreed that in order for us to all understand and be at the same page, we also developed these, what we call the donut states, the future desirable direction of each topic. So that was also really important for us to kind of be at the same page. When we speak about these topics, what do we really mean? So that was also a key process of ours to set up these future directions.
Yeah, the future state of the sector. Yeah, and I keep from what you were saying the importance of bringing all these different actors that know well the sector to select these topics that they feel connected with, and that it's not a desk research exercise, cannot be done behind the doors. Thank you, Christine, and hopefully people can see more about this work when it becomes also published and for others to read. Let me bring back Andres Montenegro from the Specialty Coffee Association. And Andres, hello.
Hello. I'm here.
Okay. I was wondering if you were spotlighted, but yeah, great. Thank you, Leonora. You're doing amazing in the backside of the technical team. Yes, you're working with the coffee sector. And I was wondering, maybe you could share something about the particularities of the sector and how do you use the donut to tackle some of these issues that the sector is facing. And I'm curious for you to talk a little bit more about, you told me about some standards that you want to develop for the sector and for coffee businesses that are inspired by the donut. You want to talk a little bit more about that too? Well, little time, but yeah, these are some things.
Awesome. Let me start with the first part. The coffee sector faces, let's say, the same challenges we see in our society, and in particular, the agri-food sector. We deal with market volatility, pricing challenges for green coffee trading, the compounding vulnerability of the climate crisis, and social inequities that amplify impacts and risk, in particular to marginalized groups in the coffee systems, but that threaten the sector at large. So in addition to that, I think that the most important challenge that we still need to figure out is how to do this collectively, how to solve these challenges as a sector and as a society. I truly believe that this is the challenge of our time. So for us, using the donut model means that we are aiming to keep coffee production within ecological ceilings, deforestation emissions, while ensuring social foundations, farmer income, farmer well-being, etc. So I like to use this analogy of the footprint, but also the handprint of coffee productions to recognize that when we talk about a thriving coffee industry and sector, we need to acknowledge and strengthen that connection for guiding policies and practices that balance sectorial prosperity within planetary boundaries and with human dignity and flourishing. So that connects to the second part of your question. Our theory change and our sustainability agenda focuses on mindsets shift to drive innovative, sustainable business behaviors backed by high quality research and sectoral dialogue. So with our top material focus being equitable value distribution, we are trying to develop sustainability approaches that integrate environmental impact, social equity, and economic viability. And we're trying to move beyond compliance towards shared value creation in the coffee systems. And we aspire to do this to be, let's say, they had the highest sustainable feature for the coffee sector. And because we develop educational programs that are recognized worldwide, we have trade shows that also global impact and standards that are used for the coffee industry, like the coffee value assessment that is used to grade coffee and, let's say, define what value is and how you could inform trading practices. We are embedding Doughnut economic perspective in all of that. So we have sustainability programs that are now using sustainability jargon with specific mentions and tools from the Doughnut Economic Action Labs. And we are also using this as a reference in our sustainability awards. We use the Deep Design Business Reference Purpose Networks Governance as part of the way we recognize winners in this award. So we're trying to keep providing fodder for that conversation. So, but I will stop there.
Thank you, Andres. It's great to see this work and how you work with a network convening this collaboration and also raising awareness and diving deeper into the different enterprise design of the businesses. Well, I'm giving now the floor to Laura Prota, who is from the Rome Food Policy Council in the American University. Laura? Hello.
Okay, everybody, hi.
Hi, Laura. Good to hear also from you. We heard from Tess and
Yes,
Sissy said a
thank you
little
for
bit
having
about.
us here today. Yes, it's a great honor.
Yes, it's nice to have all these different voices and all these different sectors. You're working with the food sector and their own food policy council. That's the idea. And I was curious, maybe you want to share a little bit, what did you find interesting about the Doughnut and the connection with the food system? Which key challenges could we address maybe by using the Doughnut? And why do you think the food policy councils could benefit from it?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Ilektra. These are good questions. And in fact, one of the main issue about one of the major challenges we have today is how to deliver food that is environmentally sustainable, healthy, and affordable to all. Unfortunately, our industrial system, our agricultural system, is very much focused on productivity alone, and therefore they provide this perception that conventional food is the cheapest and the most accessible to particularly to low-income people. But in fact, this perception is overlooking the broader and often hidden costs that are embedded in our production system. And recently, FAO estimated that there are about these costs in healthcare, environmental damage, and social impacts can account for about $10 trillion per year. So it's a huge amount of money that we are actually spending on repairing and going back, saving the environment rather than actually redesigning it from scratch and them on some more regenerative practices. I think the Doughnut economic model is very important for the food system to think about food system today, because it can help us to move beyond affordability as just a matter of the price, and instead move us towards a more holistic kind of vision. And in fact, all the dimensions of the Doughnut can be very easily mapped onto food, from land conservation to income and work, to biodiversity, fresh water withdrawals, and so on and so forth. However, in order to make it actionable, I think it's very important to find some partners that can work on the field to actually find the right indicators, the right targets also to measure the impact. And because I've been working for the last year as a coordinator of the Food Policy Council, particularly the working table of food waste, I realized that in fact, Food Policy Council can be a very, very good way to implement the donuts, and so therefore to downsize them not only to the sector but also to the city perspective. In fact, you see that food systems impact so many different departments, from health to environment, wealth, welfare, industry and commerce, education, innovation, and so on. And so for the local administration, it's very hard sometimes to make a coherent food policy because they are divided into silos, as you were saying before, right? So Food Policy Councils already are doing the work of connecting around. So either they are part of the local administration or they work independently as or the consulting bodies. The important thing is that they are trying to actually overcome this limitation and brings together holistic policies into the local administration. The donuts, however, can be a very good tools in their hands, not only to reflect about how to measure and what type of targets to set, but also to compare each other and develop a common narrative that goes a little bit beyond the specific case. In this respect, I think it's the Center for Food Study at the American University of Rome and the Rome Food Policy Council are joint efforts to organize a workshop in this June. And the workshop, we have invited representatives from all across Europe, and I have to say we are very happy to see so much interest from France, England, Germany, Italy, Spain, together with the US, Canada, Australia, alongside university, international organizations. And we will all talk about how to make Food Policy Council work in practice, because it's not easy from a governance perspective. But it's also giving us the great opportunity to introduce the Doughnut Economic model to Food Policy Council as a way, the tool to rethink and consider their targets and to join action towards common advocacy.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. I will need to wrap it up so that we have some time, but I keep what you were saying about how it can become a common language between food policy councils. They can see all the different priorities and compare where they stand. Thank you very much. We look forward to this work in June. I'll give the floor to Anita because I did a little skip there. Hi, Anita, from the Plant-Based Treaty. You want to talk to us a little bit more about how you use the donut to develop your report, and somehow you talked about it already, to redefine a little bit what is important for food sector. And yeah, share a little bit some insights about this process.
Thank you. So we started with the scientific sort of the planetary boundaries, and it was surprising how much the food system was a leading cause of a lot of the breaches. For example, freshwater use, biogeochemical flows, land use, biodiversity was a leading cause of the breach of those systems, and it's also a leading cause of climate change with 1/3 of the greenhouse gas emissions. We then looked at we took a comprehensive approach to looking at solutions and using a lot of the UN Sustainable Development Goals as are included in the donut, but we used our three broad principles. The first is to redirect economic and policy instruments such as taxes, subsidies, and regulations, public information campaigns. Then we also looked at relinquish, like not making the problem worse. So no expanded animal agriculture, protecting indigenous rights. Indigenous people are the land defenders who are killed disproportionately in the Amazon and other areas of the world. And then we looked at restore or reforesting the earth. And so we looked at policy ideas in those three categories. And one of our main targets is the city, because the city is where the majority of the population lives, and it is very responsive to citizen pressure, and it does have a lot of jurisdiction. And so a lot of our focus is trying to get cities involved. And so from a global perspective, we look at land use and that, 3/4 of the land could be rewilded if the food system went plant-based. So we could go from 4 billion hectares used for farmland to 1 billion hectares. That's a 75% reduction if our food system went plant-based. But then at the city level, we also have to have rewilding and a green city so that insects can move from one location to another. So you need about 20% green cover in cities. And one of the solutions that is absolutely key is having community gardens. And for example, in the United Kingdom, there are hundreds of thousands of people that are looking for allotments. And so that, in terms of food security, that would be a key solution. So when we do advocacy with the city, we look at these different types of policy instruments. But so at the end of the day, we're looking for a global treaty, but also local implementation at the present.
Thank you, thank you. It somehow sounds to me that it helps you also see the big picture and find the interdependencies between the food sector and other themes, and therefore have a much more strategic conversation. And it's very interesting how you bring this work from a global perspective to the local action. Thank you, Anita. More people can find your work. I saw you shared it on the chat. I am giving now quickly. This is a big group. I'm giving the word to Jenny, back to Jenny from when and she spoke about the development of the design. And I'm curious, Jenny, to talk a little bit about you and Danny also spoke about the concept of no building or the negative carbon budget in terms of construction. Do you want to talk a little bit more about what you encountered when you developed this radical new design that was you were trying to fully stay true to the Doughnut economic principles? And you can talk about what will happen with the material availability or how mature was the sector.
Yes. I think, I mean, one of the biggest obstacles that we encountered was exactly that, like the tension between the ambition of the Doughnut framework and then the maturity of the construction sector. And you could see those from two points. I mean, one is the very concrete materials, and we looked into that. If we are to create a school with only reused materials, that turned out to be impossible because we don't have those suppliers or the logistics for that to happen at a scale and for larger buildings. And then the other side, like the more emotional, mental side, is also how uninformed the industry is when it comes to understanding the scale of challenge needed. And I mean, Danny explained it really, really well. I mean, we cannot build, then what does that mean? And how do we move forward? And I also saw there was a nice question here in the chat if we questioned education systems and its purpose as well. And I think that's also where this becomes really, really inspiring. If you look at systems, I mean, we started with the building, but then how is that linked to education of future generations? And it's all linked in various forms and various ways. So yeah, I mean, I think we planted a seed. We tried to start some inspiring dialogues, as you said as well, cross silos, and we came up with actually two solutions. One was what the municipality asked for, which was a master plan and a building. But then we kind of delivered a little bit on the side a radical also, which was to not use a building at all, but have a school outdoors for children.
It's great to hear this work and the way what you encountered and the things you ended up developing. And yeah, I'm curious to see how all this unfolds for the construction sector in general. And thank you for your point on education and transforming education. I go back to Shirley, two more, and I already see the time. Thank you for answering some of the questions that people have on the chat. Thank you very much. Shirley, you work with the tourism sector, and it's a sector that many initiatives start grappling their heads around. It's a sector that creates a lot of pressure on the local level, especially in big cities. Do you want to talk a little bit more about how you worked with these different cities in the Netherlands? And what was the primary issue you shared with me? Like there was a specific issue you focused to work on with them.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about what you found there?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so as I mentioned in the introduction already, is that a lot of the cities, they are still very much focused on growth. And so the aim was to tackle that and to prioritize other things. But then one of the key challenges that came out of the workshop is that, okay, if we're moving away from this growth focus, how are we gonna know if we're going in the right direction or if we're being successful in that sense? And currently, most of the destinations have to show numbers, either visitor numbers, overnight stays, or the money spent by visitors to show that they're doing their work well, their job well. So yeah, the question that came out of the workshop was, what are alternatives for that? Like, how can we map the impact of the social and the ecological spheres? How can we relate that specifically to tourism? Can we measure in the same way that we've always been doing, or do we need completely different alternatives for that? Yeah, and mostly what kind of indicators do we use?
How do we define success in tourism?
Exactly.
Beyond the numbers of visitors.
Yeah. And also then seeing how can you define the boundaries of what is tourism? So are you measuring the whole city impact, or how do you define what is specifically linked to tourism, or shouldn't we have to make this distinction altogether? So I think those were very important questions, and that, I mean, it's still in development, but I think those are very important for the future of tourism as well.
I've recently learned, I think when we were discussing together, also that Amsterdam is one of is the only city that I know that has developed certain boundaries of the amount of tourists that they can receive, like the upper boundary of the maximum, but also the lowest in terms of like keeping the sector alive and the economy of the city.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, all right. Thank you so much. We hope to see more of this work, because tourism is one of the sector that is being discussed a lot as how we go about to transform it.
Yeah, I hope so too.
Yeah, thank you, Shirley. And I give the word to Jono, who spoke about the implementation of the donut for the healthcare. I know it's currently being developed, but this is the only initiative that is also mentioned on the guide that is taking a more quantitative approach, trying to really showcase the impacts through those veggies on the donut. Maybe you can share some insights on what motivated you to adopt the donut model, and what challenges you might have encountered. I guess there have been many, but just like sharing a little bit, how has this gone so far?
Yeah, sure. Firstly, I think we adopted the donut model because of how effectively we felt it could integrate two distinct yet critical objectives in the healthcare space. Those being the pursuit of universal healthcare. So in other words, ensuring that all people have access to decent healthcare as a prerequisite for a good life. And secondly, the pursuit of environmentally sustainable healthcare. So I guess ultimately we saw its potential as this unifying framework that could help monitor progress towards these twin objectives. I suppose much like how the original framework was intended to serve as this compass more broadly for decent livelihoods within planetary boundaries. In terms of challenges along the way, there have been quite a few. I feel like the process of threshold setting, I would say, has probably been the most difficult. particularly with respect to the ecological ceiling. So as you've said, our adaptive framework is quantitative in nature, in the sense that we actually calculate the amount of shortfall and overshoot relative to the foundation and ceiling. And to do that, you first need to define where the threshold is for each selected dimension. So, for example, in the context of climate change, what percentage of the remaining carbon budget should be allocated to healthcare, both globally but also at a national level? Should citizens of highly developed countries receive a smaller carbon allocation for healthcare than those living in less developed countries, so as to kind of conserve ecological space in support of health system advancement where it's kind of needed most? There's no one single right answer to any of these questions, but we still needed to settle on a defensible approach. And to do so, we drew upon expertise within the Lancet Commission itself, as well as Andrew Fanning, who's the data analysis and research lead at Deal. And he's provided us some really invaluable guidance along the way. So I'd just like to acknowledge him here for his encouragement and ongoing input. Our approach was also heavily informed by Danny and her team's work, particularly exploring the various downscaling approaches within the Doughnut for urban development work, which I really agree is a critical resource in the field right now. And I'm more generally grateful that more and more people are working in this space. And so when our work comes out later this year or early next, I'm hoping that it can similarly serve as another example of how Doughnut principles can be downscaled and applied at a sectoral level. Thank you.
Thank you too. It's really inspiring, and I'm very intrigued by hearing this whole process you put together. I think many of us would like to see your methodology, and it's also really great to see healthcare as a sector looking at to synergize social and ecological considerations. A great example. We are 4 minutes before closing. I'm checking on the chat in parallel, and I'm realizing that many of the questions are already being answered. Hope those you have still questions, I'm going to have a look what can be addressed, but please dive in the guide, because many of the things we discussed are there more extensive. And in the last few minutes, I would just like to share this for us. Let me see if you can see this instead of the previous slide I was sharing. Can you see my new or not? Can you see my...
Oh, yeah.
Not yet?
No.
Oops, sorry. Then let me do that once more. So I'm gonna ask us all to go here, take your phones. Now you should see it. Is this on the screen?
Now it's about to share. I'm also gonna share the link in the chat.
Oh, it's funny because I see it on my laptop. One more time. No?
Not really, but I'm sharing the link in the chat.
But yet I would like to share also the... Can you see it now?
No.
No.
It appears here. Well, maybe if some people are there.
Into the chat.
It's here.
There it's down.
We're seeing now.
Great. Just wanted to feel a little bit the pulse of the room. We are many people. We had like about 250 people, and now we are almost 180. I'm curious to hear from all of you. I wanted to learn also from which sector you're working on, but we had such a rich conversation with many initiatives. The idea was to show you the plurality of approaches, the variety of initiatives when we talk about sectors. We can't wait to hear how this guide helps or not, and we want to know what other support would you need. Many people found this session inspiring, and surprising and energizing and wow. And challenging it is. Curiosity keeps us together, revealing and warm. It's great to have a community of thinkers and doers that are working in that space. And with that great word cloud, I would like to maybe just let me stop my camera and just come back to you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you all for being here, for staying for that time. Thank you to all the panelists for being, for sharing their great work, for stepping in and contributing, and also doing the work. We hope you exchange inspiration. We love to hear, again, as I say, your feedback. Write your stories. Tell us what tools do you need. What are your questions? And we keep on going. Let's get started. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Bye. See you. Thank you again.
Thank
you,
you.
Ilektra, and
Thank
everyone
you.
else.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Leonora.
I am wait for no one to be around. Wanting to understand how to save the chat. Someone mentioned that maybe we need to do that before
Yeah.
we post the.
There is a way.
Wait, actually, I'm gonna stop recording.